London is about to become unrecognizable. Right now, while you're watching this video, there are cranes reshaping the skyline, tunnels being carved beneath your feet, and construction crews working on projects so massive, they make the Olympics look like a backyard renovation. By 2028, the city you think you know will be fundamentally different. And we're not talking about another fancy skyscraper or a renovated train station. We're talking about infrastructure that will redefine how millions of people live, work, and move through one of the world's most important cities. So buckle up. Let's talk about 6 mega projects that are turning London into something the Victorians would be jealous of. Project 6. The Old Oak Common Superhub. Let's start with something that sounds boring on paper but is actually insane when you think about it. Old Oak Common. Never heard of it? Of course you haven't. It's currently a railway depot in West London that most people drive past without a second thought. But by 2028, it's going to be the busiest railway station in the entire United Kingdom. Not just busy, the busiest, more passengers than Waterloo, more connections than King's Cross, more ambition than any transport hub Britain has built in a century. We're talking about 250,000 passengers per day flowing through this place. That's roughly the entire population of Newcastle passing through one station every single day. Here's why this matters. Old Oak Common is where two of Britain's most expensive infrastructure projects meet. The Elizabeth Line, which you might know as Crossrail, already stops here. But now they're adding High-Speed 2 or HS2, the controversial high-speed rail line that's supposed to connect London to Birmingham and eventually Manchester and Leeds. When HS2 trains pull into Old Oak Common, they'll be traveling at speeds up to 250 miles per hour, or about 400 kilometers per hour. That's faster than a Formula One car on most tracks. The station itself is being built on a 130-acre site. For context, that's roughly the size of 100 football pitches. The main station building will have 14 platforms, 6 for HS2 and 8 for conventional trains. Above ground, they're planning an entire new neighborhood with 25,000 homes and space for 65,000 jobs. It's not just a station, it's a new piece of city. But here's where it gets interesting. Old Oak Common is being designed as an interchange superhub. You'll be able to hop off a high-speed train from Birmingham, walk across a platform and jump onto the Elizabeth Line heading into central London, or transfer to the Overground, or the Great Western Railway, all without leaving the building. It's the transport equivalent of a perfectly executed relay race. The cost? Around £1.5 billion just for the station. That's before you count the wider development. And yes, that's billion with a B1. For comparison, that's about what it cost to build the entire London Olympic Stadium, Aquatic Centre and Velodrome combined. Critics will tell you HS2 is a waste of money. And sure, the project has gone over budget more times than anyone wants to count. But here's the thing. By 2028, when Old Oak Common opens, it's going to cut journey times from London to Birmingham from 84 minutes down to 52 minutes. Suddenly, Birmingham becomes a suburb of London. Manchester becomes a commuter city. The entire geography of the UK starts to compress. This one is actually happening. The tunnels are being bored. The platforms are being laid. The cranes are up. By late 2028, you'll be able to walk into a station that didn't exist 5 years earlier and catch a train to Birmingham faster than you can get across London during rush hour. Project 5. The Silvertown Tunnel. Traffic in East London is a special kind of hell. If you've ever tried to cross the Thames east of Tower Bridge, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's basically one option, the Blackwall Tunnel, and it's a Victorian-era bottleneck that handles about 100,000 vehicles per day. That's roughly one car every second, all day every day. The Blackwall Tunnel opened in 1897. Let that sink in. The same year that Dracula was published, the same year that Queen Victoria celebrated her Diamond Jubilee, someone decided to dig a tunnel under the Thames, and we're still using it as a primary route in 2025. So what's the solution? Build another tunnel right next to it. Meet the Silvertown Tunnel. This isn't some small expansion. We're talking about a brand new crossing consisting of twin tunnels, each about 1.4 kilometers long, running beneath the Thames between Silvertown on the north bank and Greenwich Peninsula on the south. The tunnels will have 2 lanes in each direction, and they're being designed to handle everything from buses to heavy goods vehicles. The project broke ground in 2021, And if everything stays on schedule, it'll open in late 2025, just in time to relieve congestion before the real chaos of 2028 hits. The construction method is genuinely fascinating. They're using tunnel boring machines, massive mechanical worms that chew through earth and rock at about 10 meters per day. These machines are so large that each one weighs about as much as 20 blue whales. They work 24 hours a day, cutting through London clay and chalky bedrock, leaving behind a perfectly circular tunnel, lined with concrete segments. Here's the controversial bit. They're planning to charge a toll, between £1 and £4 per journey, depending on the time of day and whether you have an account. Londoners are not thrilled about this. The Blackwall Tunnel has always been free, and suddenly you're being asked to pay for the privilege of sitting in slightly less traffic. But the math actually makes sense. The toll isn't really about raising money. It's about managing demand. If the tunnel were free, everyone would use it, and you'd just move the traffic jam from one location to another. By charging a fee, transport planners can keep traffic flowing and ensure the tunnel doesn't immediately become as clogged as the Blackwall. The total cost sits at around £2 billion. That's expensive for a tunnel. But consider what you're getting. This will be the first new road crossing in East London in over 30 years. It'll cut journey times by up to 20 minutes during peak hours. For businesses moving goods across the city, that's massive. For the 1.2 million people who live in East London, it's the difference between a commute being tolerable or soul-destroying. And unlike a lot of megaprojects, the Silvertown Tunnel has a climate angle. By reducing congestion, you reduce idling vehicles pumping out emissions. The tunnel itself will have dedicated bus lanes, making public transport more attractive. It's not perfect, and environmental groups have raised legitimate concerns. But it's at least attempting to balance the needs of a growing city with the reality of climate change. Project 4. Battersea Power Station. Phase 3. 4 iconic white chimneys on the south bank of the Thames, featured on Pink Floyd album covers, a landmark of industrial London that's been sitting derelict since 1983. Well, not anymore. The first 2 phases of redevelopment are already complete. The power station itself has been converted into offices. They're building an entire neighborhood. We're talking about 15 new buildings rising up around the power station, creating what they're calling Battersea Roof Gardens. This will include 1,300 new homes, office space for 25,000 workers, new parks, a riverside walk, and a town square that's supposed to rival Covent Garden. The scale is bonkers. The entire development site covers 42 acres. That's bigger than the City of London's financial district. Battersea will have been completely transformed from a forgotten industrial wasteland into one of London's most desirable postcodes. But here's what makes this project genuinely smart. Rather than just another luxury development, they extended the London Underground to get there. A brand new Northern Line extension with 2 stations, one at Battersea Power Station and one at 9 Elms. This opened in 2021, and suddenly a neighborhood that was basically unreachable without a car became a 9-minute tube ride from the West End. The cost of the entire development is estimated at around £9 billion. Yes, billion. That makes it one of the largest property developments in Europe. Malaysian investors are bankrolling most of it, betting that London's property market will keep climbing, and that people will pay premium prices to live in converted industrial chic. And they're probably right. The apartments aren't cheap. We're talking about 2-bedroom flats starting at around £1 million. But they're selling, because this isn't just about housing, it's about creating a destination. The power station itself now has restaurants, a chimney lift experience where you can ride up inside one of those iconic chimneys, event spaces, and a massive central atrium that feels like a cathedral to the industrial age. Phase 3 adds the final pieces. More housing, sure, but also the public realm. Parks, squares, walkways, the kind of spaces that turn a development into a neighborhood. By 2028, you'll be able to walk from Battersea Park all the way along the river to Vauxhall through continuous green space and pedestrianized areas. For a city as dense as London, that's huge. Critics will point out that this is gentrification on steroids. And they're not wrong. This used to be a working-class area, and now it's being transformed into a playground for the wealthy. Battersea has some of the fastest rising property prices in London, and long-time residents are being priced out. That's the uncomfortable truth of megaprojects. They change cities, but they don't always change them for everyone. Project 3. The Canary Wharf Extension and Elizabeth Line Integration. Canary Wharf. Love it or hate it, it's one of the most important business districts in Europe. Those gleaming skyscrapers in East London house the headquarters of banks, law firms, and tech companies. On any given weekday, about 120,000 people work there. That's more than the population of Cambridge. But Canary Wharf has always had a problem. It's isolated. Built on the Isle of Dogs, it's surrounded by water on 3 sides, and historically difficult to reach. The Jubilee line helps, but it gets packed. Or Docklands Light Railway is essentially a very fancy tram that becomes sardine can levels of crowded during rush hour. Enter the Elizabeth line. When the full line finally opened in 2022, it changed everything. Suddenly, you could get from Canary Wharf to Bond Street in 14 minutes. To Heathrow Airport in 38 minutes. But the developers at Canary Wharf saw an opportunity. They're building upward and outward. By 2028, the district will have expanded with 8 new skyscrapers, including one called 10 Bank Street, that'll be 198 meters tall. That's about 650 feet, roughly the height of Seattle's Space Needle. The expansion includes 16,000 square meters of new retail space, which is about the size of 3 football pitches. More restaurants, more bars, more of everything that turns a business district into an actual neighborhood where people might want to spend time after work. Here's the clever bit. They're integrating everything with the Elizabeth Line station. New underground walkways, direct connections from office lobbies to train platforms, even underground bike parking for 1,500 bicycles. The goal is to make it so seamless that you never have to step outside. You can go from your desk to a train to Liverpool Street without ever feeling the rain. The total investment in this expansion is around £3.5 billion. That includes not just the buildings but the infrastructure, the public spaces, and the upgraded connections. It's a bet that even in an era of remote work, people will still want to come into offices if those offices are in buildings that don't feel like prisons. And honestly, the bet seems to be paying off. Occupancy rates at Canary Wharf have bounced back post-pandemic. Companies like Clifford Chance and Citigroup have renewed their leases. New tenants are moving in, because when you can get from Canary Wharf to anywhere in London in under 30 minutes, suddenly it's not isolated anymore. It's central. Project 2. The Thames Tideway Tunnel. Let's talk about something genuinely disgusting. That's also genuinely important. London's sewage system. Right now, every time it rains heavily in London, the Victorian sewers overflow. And when they overflow, millions of tons of raw sewage gets dumped directly into the Thames. We're talking about human waste, toilet paper, everything you flush, all of it flowing into the river that runs through the heart of the city. This happens about 50 times per year. 50 times. The Thames becomes an open sewer. It's an environmental catastrophe and a public health risk. And it's been this way for decades, because fixing it requires rebuilding infrastructure that's been in the ground since 1865. Enter the Thames Tideway Tunnel, also known as the Super Sewer. This is one of the most ambitious engineering projects in Europe, and it's all happening beneath your feet. The tunnel is 25 kilometers long, roughly 15 miles, running deep under the Thames from West London to East London. It's big enough to drive a double-decker bus through. Really. The diameter is 7.2 meters, or about 24 feet. They're boring this tunnel at depths of up to 65 meters below ground level. The tunnel runs parallel to the Thames, intercepting overflow from the old Victorian sewers before it can dump into the river. When it rains, instead of sewage flowing into the Thames, the construction started in 2016, and it's scheduled to be completed in 2028. These machines have been given names like Charlotte, Selena, and Ursula, because apparently when you're boring tunnels under a major city, you need to anthropomorphize your equipment. The cost is eye-watering, around £4.5 billion. That makes it one of the most expensive infrastructure projects in UK history. Thames Water, the utility company, is paying for it, which means it's ultimately being funded by customer bills. Your water bill has been going up to pay for this, and it'll keep going up until the tunnel is complete. But here's why it matters. Once operational, the tunnel will capture 95% of the sewage overflows that currently pollute the Thames. The river will be cleaner than it's been in over a century. Fish populations will recover. You might even be able to swim in the Thames again without risking a horrific infection. This isn't sexy. Nobody's gonna take Instagram photos of a sewage tunnel. But it's the kind of infrastructure that separates functional cities from failing ones. London's population has grown from 6.5 million in 1960 to nearly 9 million today. The old sewers literally cannot handle the load. This tunnel fixes that problem for the next century. Project 1. The expansion of London City Airport. And now, the project that might be the most controversial of all. London City Airport is tiny. It sits on a narrow strip of land in the Royal Docks in East London, surrounded by water and buildings. The runway is only 1,508 meters long, which makes it one of the shortest commercial runways in the world serving jets. But it's also incredibly convenient. City Airport is the closest airport to central London. For business travelers, that's gold. No trekking out to Heathrow or Gatwick. No 2-hour journeys on crowded trains. Just quick, efficient access. So the plan is to expand. By 2028, the airport will have increased its capacity from 6.5 million passengers per year to 9 million. They're building new stands for aircraft, expanding the terminal, and increasing the number of flights, especially to European destinations. The cost is around £500 million. Not as insane as some of the other projects, but still significant. And the controversy is real. Local residents hate this plan. The airport is already noisy, and more flights means more noise. Environmental groups point out that expanding airports in the middle of a climate crisis is madness. But here's the economic argument. City Airport supports about 3,000 jobs directly, and another 2,000 indirectly. It contributes around £750 million to the London economy every year. For a city that relies on financial services, having an airport that caters specifically to business travelers is a competitive advantage. The expansion includes better public transport links, with improved connections to the DLR and plans for better integration with the Elizabeth Line at Custom House. They're also investing in newer, quieter aircraft and stricter noise controls. Whether this is a smart investment or environmental vandalism depends on your perspective. But by 2028 it'll be done, and City Airport will cement its position as London's business travel hub. So there you have it. 6 megaprojects that are reshaping London before our eyes. A super hub railway station that'll handle 250,000 passengers daily. A new tunnel under the Thames to fix Victorian traffic nightmares. A converted power station becoming a neighborhood, Canary Wharf expanding into the Elizabeth Line era. A super sewer preventing millions of tons of raw sewage from polluting the river. And a tiny airport punching above its weight. London won't just look different, it'll function differently. The way people move, work, and live in the city will be fundamentally altered. And whether you think these projects are brilliant investments or colossal wastes of money, one thing is certain. They're happening. Right now, above your head, and all around you. The London you know is being rebuilt. And honestly, that's kind of incredible.